Hi, guys, and welcome. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Fireside Chat with the Johnstons. On this episode, we have Justin on here, who is my husband, my business partner, and the CEO of Next Generation Gym Owners. We are going to be talking about how you know if growth is maybe not the answer to the problem in your gym, and 5 examples of times in your gym that growth would not be the best solution for you and actually might create more problems than you have at the moment. So let's go ahead and get into it on this episode of Fireside Chat with the Johnstons. Hey guys, and welcome to this episode of Fireside Chat with the Johnstons. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Justin. I have to point at myself.
Who are you again? It's been a minute.
Oh, you're funny.
Well, I do keep filming these at times that Justin is busy doing other things, so that's on me. We're excited to have you back, Justin.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, guys, we have a great episode for you today. We are going to be talking about growth, but we're going to talk about it a little bit differently than we have in the past.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you have been in our Facebook groups for a little bit of time, we have the Cheer Gym Owners Facebook group. Make sure you go join it.
And the coaches group too.
All-Star Cheer Coaches and Owners Facebook group.
Yes.
Shameless plugs. Tons of free information. You need to go join those. If you've been in those groups for a period of time, you know that we have these amazing guides that we put out about how to grow your gym, grow your All-Star program, grow your profit, grow your revenue, all of that great stuff.
I've grown since last time I was here. It's moved around.
You're moving. You're taller.
Hello. No.
Justin's moving his microphone.
I'm sitting up straight, okay, for once. Yeah.
For those who are just listening, which is the majority of you these days, Justin will never be on this episode again.
Go ahead.
For those of you who are just listening, because Justin, that is the majority of our listeners these days. My listeners these days.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, you haven't been on as much, but
Yes.
That's the majority. We're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Apple Podcasts is huge.
It's growing.
I'm excited to see that so many of your Apple users get away from those Android people. They're kind of weird. Anyway.
I was never an Apple guy, but I'm still not fully Apple, but man, phones, it's like night and day difference. Like I never have problems really.
I mean, I suppose it's really cheap when we need to, buy Justin a new computer, because that was his excitement the other day. He got a new computer.
Oh yeah, I've had the same computer, the Acer, less than $200. It's just a Chromebook, but I don't even know if it's a computer. It's more like a big laptop. But anyways, I got the Acer like in I looked at the date on the back. It was 2018 for $200. Now you want to talk about getting your money's worth out of a laptop,
Justin,
tablet? That is the money right there.
No, because you know what his good news was for our staff meeting the other day? He's like, now when I move my finger, the mouse goes with it. Like, you didn't get your money's worth. I think that stopped working like years ago.
I mean, it is so fast now.
Now when I type a word, it follows me.
And you know what's cool? The same amount that I paid back in 2018 is the same amount that I paid for the new Acer just the other day.
So inflation doesn't exist. Don't watch the news.
Acer does not have inflation.
The news is, but it's hard to inflate a product that nobody wants.
Is that an insult or you insulting me?
There you go.
Well, I want it, and it's super fast. I'm like, I'm gonna start getting a new one every like 4 years now instead of 2018. Yeah,
7 years.
Yeah.
Do you know what's funny? I actually thought I had Justin on board with a MacBook a couple years ago, and so I bought him a MacBook.
She did.
And now I have 2 MacBooks.
It was too much.
Actually, within like a week, I had 2 MacBooks, and mine was fairly new at the time too. So I had 2 pretty new ones. No, I'm not giving them away or selling them cheap. I'm going to keep them and use them both.
Yeah.
Which is what I do now. So, guys, we've been talking about growth a lot for many years within Next Gen, and today we're going to take a little bit of a different approach, because every so often you find someone who wants to grow and you're like, actually, I want you to pause for a minute, because explosive growth is good 75% of the time. And then 25% of the time, you're like, hold on, we need to know some more data before we can help figure out how to help you grow, because growth looks different.
Yeah, it could really mess you up, even worse.
It sure can.
Yeah.
So let's get into the 5 or 6 reasons today that we believe if you're in these positions, you should not be focused on growth. And we'll kind of tell you what we think you should focus on if that happens to be you.
Number 1 is the leaky bucket.
Guys, if you have kids who are disenrolling from your program, they're dropping at the end of the season, or they're recreational athletes and you're seeing that drop happen at the end of the month, and I don't just mean a couple, I mean a pretty decent amount, a percentage of your program. If you have that happening, you should not be focused on growth right now.
What do we call that in Next Gen?
Churn.
We call it churn. So if you hear churn,
Yep.
that's the rotation of kids in and out of your program.
Right.
So
now there's going to be a couple times of year that you're going to see a higher churn rate, right? And so you can calculate your churn by dividing the number of athletes who dropped at the end of the month by the number you had in the program on the first day of the month. So let's say you had 10 kids drop at the end of the month. You started the month with 100 kids. Your churn is going to be 10%, 10 divided by 100.
has nothing to do with how many kids have come in.
Not really.
No, just the number at that point. Okay.
Yep. And so we calculate that on a monthly basis for a couple reasons. The first is you kind of want to know what your trends are. If I know that the majority of kids start disenrolling for summer in like April, then I know that I need to up my marketing in February and March so that I can balance out the number of kids who are going to drop for the summer to go hang out at Lake of the Ozarks.
And these are just knowing your numbers.
Yeah.
If you don't know those numbers, then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, we're losing 20% this month. And what,
Yes.
or last month, what happened? And you're like, but then when you can go back a year previous and be like, hey, we did lose 15-20% last year at this time. We should have known that. You can predict this stuff.
Yeah, nobody panics like I do when in our gym when it comes to stuff like that. That I'm like, you mean we had 57 disenrollments? Well, do the math though. If I have 700 kids and I do 57 disenrollments, it's really like, is it high? Yes, but if it's April, okay, under a 10% churn, we know that that is notorious this time of year in our gym. And so we know that we can increase enrollments in February and March by doing a series of things that we know increase enrollments. We can do that prior to April so that we're already starting at a higher number than we have seen in the past, and it decreases your churn. The other part of that is if you have high churn, you probably have other issues happening within your gym, and you really need to solve those before you invest the time and energy into getting more kids in the gym.
Word of the day, notorious. You just used notorious.
I said notorious?
Yeah, you did. It's
like notorious B.I.G.? No. Are we about to wrap?
No.
Okay. Well,
word of the day, notorious.
I already missed it. What did I say?
Oh, you said that in April, it's notorious that we have these many drops.
Oh, I mean,
yeah,
it is.
It was just an interesting word.
The notorious Golden Grotto Sharks.
That was good vocabulary, I guess, because notoriously we do have that happen.
Yes. This is like Sesame Street. Word of the day, notorious. Okay, go ahead.
So the other reason that you want to calculate your churn is because if it is not a notorious time of the year to see those drops.
It's going to be the word now.
There we go. If it's not one of those times of the year that you would normally see drops, which for us tends to be in like April, May, and December. Well, let's say I start seeing that kind of drop in October. Now I can recognize I have a problem and you need to get help.
Yes. But adding a whole bunch of new kids when you are having this many drops that's notoriously bigger, and you haven't fixed it. You got to use it now. Every time you're gonna have to use it.
Okay, yeah, I will.
But when you have this many drops and you haven't figured out why you're having this many drops, or maybe it's more than anticipated, and you're just adding more kids. There's more kids coming in and out, and that's not good on a lot of different factors. But we'll talk more about those.
Yeah, absolutely. So
the leaky bucket.
And when is the last time you looked at your churn rates or you calculated them?
Yeah.
Okay.
So got to stop the leaky bucket. So how are we going to do that, Danielle?
Well, number 2, you should not be growing when your experience for the client is unreliable.
Right.
So if somebody is walking in and they're, you may have a front desk person some days and some days you don't.
Sometimes it's your mom. Sometimes it's a friend.
Why would you even say sometimes it's your mom?
Actually, most people have family that run the front desk for the first start of a gym. Why would you say that, Danielle? Because we did, okay? And how did she take notes? In cursive on sticky notes.
It was basically calligraphy.
Yeah.
It was the end of the night.
That's how my mom does things.
I would get done coaching and I would be like, thank you for writing down that we sold a Snickers bar. Writing it in cursive. And then other times I would call her and I would be like, I'm not sure what this says. I read cursive, but her handwriting was so fancy.
Yeah. And tiny. Sure,
that's true. Yeah. That's true. So,
but when it's the consistency. So when you, sometimes you have people up there that know what they're doing. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes coaches show up on time. Sometimes they don't.
That was exactly the example I was going to use too.
It's that McDonald's feel and not the quality of the hamburger I'm talking about. I'm talking about the consistency. You should know that every single time when you go in there, you're going to get your ice cream, but but that's 50-50 chance at a McDonald's these days that the ice cream machine works.
Yeah. No, if you want ice cream.
But the hamburger is always going to typically be the same. So
yeah.
But and that's what people want to see, that consistency. What is it in a restaurant? It's 3 times. People will visit a restaurant 3 times before they come to the conclusion that this is a restaurant that we're going to normally come to now.
I thought you were just going to say before they come to a conclusion that this is a restaurant.
No, but they'll they're going to try it out 3 times. Once the 3rd time, if it's a consistent, it's just a proven fact with that. And in services, it's pretty typical for that. So.
Right. Unless you live in a tiny town, and then we just continue going back hoping for the best because you only have so many choices.
That's on the restaurant side, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So in your gym though, I mean, things that happen that would be inconsistent would be things like, is your phone answered during the day? Do you leave at 3:00 in the afternoon and nobody is there to answer the phone? That would be an element of consistency. Is a coach always there 15 or 30 minutes before the gym opens for the day? Or are people waiting at your door to get in and you're still trying to unlock and turn on, lights and stuff like that?
Is people's billing being consistently billed?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, oh, sorry, mistake. And, that happens once in a while. It can happen. But man, when it's consistently wrong or on the wrong date or just, it's just all over the place, that's an irritant to people that just drives them away. Yeah.
Yeah. I would go so far as to say, at the end of a practice, is your child consistently walking out? And I would say 95% of the time with a solid demeanor.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Did they have fun? Were they excited to be there and stuff? Yeah.
Now, does my, senior level 3 team always walk out like, man, that was a fun practice? No, but that's the level in which they're at. They're usually walking out saying, okay, that was hard, but that's what I expected.
Right.
Like I went to practice and got what I expected.
Challenge. Yeah.
Yes. Or do you have kids that 20% of the time, 25% of the time, they're coming out crying saying, Coach Danielle yelled at me because I did this and this and this. Is it consistent that you're talking to the parent at that point? If you have a kid leaving practice crying, are you catching the parent before they leave so that you can have a conversation?
Right.
So lots of issues when it comes to consistency. Parents need to feel heard. Athletes need to feel heard. Communication needs to be consistent. And if you don't, I'm not going to say it has to happen 100% of the time because this is an active, moving business and you're always going to find new problems.
Right.
But if you have major problems, you're conducting coffee and conversations or some sort of survey or focus group, and like 75% of the people are saying that you have a problem with something, maybe it's not the time to grow that program.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely time to focus on fixing that before you grow. Because, all you're going to do is grow the problem.
Yes.
This is where we have, being a pastor's kid, have church splits when you don't fix the issue that's going on. This is where we'll have a gym split.
Right.
And you'll have a large group of people just walk out.
Follow a coach.
You'll have a coach leave, decide that I'm done, and half of them will follow that coach. And so fixing that root issue and then grow that gym. Mm-hmm.
Yep, for sure. So
it's easier said than done, but knowing is honestly 90% of the battle. If you can figure out what that issue is and get that fixed, And the hard thing is asking people what the problem is.
Right.
It is because it hurts. Because usually it's a gym is, I consider your baby. And when somebody talks bad about your baby and says that your baby's ugly, it hurts. No, it does.
It does hurt.
It hurts really bad because you've put a lot of hard work into building this gym. And for somebody to tell you that, hey, I don't like the way this is being done, or I don't like the way I'm being treated, or that my kid is a number in this gym. They're not.
Nobody knows their name.
I feel like nobody cares about them. The coaches don't even act like they care about them and stuff like that. It hurts because that's not the way you started the gym, and that's not the way you feel. And try to do that, but you're a one-man band sometimes in a lot of ways, and you can't be at every place. So it's really tough.
So that's kind of what I was going to say. The majority of inconsistencies happen because you don't have quality control. Yeah. You as the owner are often so focused on coaching your team or, doing this or that you're not kind of hovering. You're not, and I'm not saying you need to micromanage, but you do need to sometimes be omnipresent. Like you need to be up at the front desk at night and just kind of see how things are going. You need to be in the lobby and just kind of be available and be there. You need to be watching your rec classes. If my back is turned to my rec classes because I'm only focused on my team, you are going to probably have inconsistencies in your gym if you don't have a really solid management structure.
Not only that, but when you're totally focused on the teams and not the rec, people see that.
That's true.
They become the redheaded stepchilds. And I don't mean that in any demeaning way, but
I have two of them.
People understand what I'm saying. They feel like they get all of the glory and all of the money all goes towards them, and we get nothing over here.
Right.
And so paying attention to only one side of the gym and not the others, and the other programs is bad.
Now you can structure your gym in such a way that you can focus on just one area, but it takes a lot of work and it takes that middle layer of management to be able to do that.
Yep.
I haven't worked our kids camp, which is our licensed childcare program. I haven't worked our kids camp in years. Like probably 2021 was the last time that I actually had a shift down there working with them. I know what's going on. I have a kids camp director. We have an assistant director. We have a customer success manager. Like we have so many people that hit that middle layer of management to where it would go through all of those people before it goes to me, that now it's okay that I'm not down there. But it's not common in a gym, especially in your first couple of years or your first, I would even say potentially your first 7 or 8 years. It's not common to have that solid of a management structure. And we didn't have that either until we were almost 10 years in.
But the floating part is the key,
right.
Is just being able to touch on all the different programs that are going on throughout the gym and not being so focused on the one. I understand if you're teaching a team, people understand that.
Right.
But when you're not teaching a team, if you're going over and checking out your ninja program or you're kind of watching and kind of floating around, talking to some parents, kind of floating around, just making sure that class is rolling like you wanted it to. Stations are being rotating like they're supposed to, all those types of things. Kids aren't standing around, goofing around, that they're not, disengaged, that kind of stuff. Because parents watch and they see that stuff. And that's when they start having issues. So,
and I would say, I think when you're coaching a team, it is vital that you have somebody else who's doing that. Right? What happens if you have a parent get, belligerent up at the front, or you have a major issue, it's raining outside and all of a sudden there is a massive flood or leak in your building and you're the only adult coaching the team? That's hard.
Everything stops. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to.
Right.
Somebody being belligerent at the front, you should have somebody be able to take care of that.
So there's kind of, boy, is this a rabbit trail, but I think it's valuable.
It is valuable.
I think it's valuable.
Yeah.
There's two ways to solve that. You either have an assistant coach who is also an adult and can handle that team while you step away, or you have a manager that can handle the situation while you're coaching. And that has to be one heck of a manager to handle some of those things.
Yep.
So, there's two ways to fry a fish. Is that what they say?
Skin a cat. Catfish. It is a fish still, but
Okay, but I don't want to skin a cat. But there's
skin a catfish. But go ahead. Skin a cat. There's two ways to skin a cat.
That's right.
No, there is. It is skin a cat.
Okay, that part is fine. I don't think catfish is the...
It is. You're not skinning a literal cat. Like a meow. No, you're not skinning a cat. It's a catfish. How do you skin a cat?
Oh, I don't think I've ever heard that before.
You have to take the skin
Skin
off
a
a cat.
catfish?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, no, I know you have to take. We're ready for segment number 3. Section 3.
I fish and do that stuff. She does not.
Justin, you put hot dogs on a line.
She does not. No, Danielle.
That is some Missouri fishing.
That's a trout line.
Yeah.
That's not a line. It's a trout line. Yeah, but that's okay. We all love you.
Don't hit the table.
Okay.
Okay.
Good job.
I feel like we're pretty good on number 2 there.
Yeah, I think we've really skinned that cat. So let's move on.
Catfish. You don't skin a cat. It's a catfish, right? There we go.
It's short for catfish. Yes.
You
made this really weird. So awkward now.
All right. Number 3.
Anything to do with dogs? That's how you walk a dog right there. Let's move on.
Let's keep going.
Yes.
Number 3 of the times that you may not want to be growing your gym is if you have some red flags within the culture of your gym. Do you have people who are coming in and just bad-mouthing your gym in the lobby? They're unhappy and they're verbally making sure everybody else knows, or maybe their body language. They're making sure everybody else knows. And I'm not just talking 1 or 2 people here. I'm talking a decent amount of people that if one new rec parent walks in the door, one new cheer parent walks in the door, there's no way they're not going to know.
Gyms are notorious for this. I'm throwing that notorious back in. But honestly, it's very common in a gym to have people just...
Culture issues.
I mean, you're working with people's kids, right. So they're at a heightened level. And so when their kid gets moved to the back, they don't understand, automatically that defense mechanism kicks in and they're not happy. So,
right.
But they don't understand. And so education comes into that. But anyways, we can move into that. But notorious for having some red flags in a gym.
Notorious. That you know what? That's exactly, you took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. When you have these situations, you can solve them. It takes a lot of time. I don't mean to say that you should never focus on growth during those moments, but we all kind of know that it's almost like a bell curve. And at one point is like the heightened emotions for people. You might be able to have that conversation and it dies out a little bit and stuff like that. I can personally say some of the most difficult parents we've had over the years that we have not removed from the gym, that we've just sort of worked with and tried to resolve their issues. Actually, some of them are pretty good now. And it's been long-term people that have been in our gym. So if you have those parents, you're like, this is never going to just pan out. Sometimes it does. Just, you have to kind of have the breaking point of like, okay, these are the things that we can work with somebody on. And these are the things that are kind of.
Sounds like a system.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's a system, to removing people as well. Like, not necessarily do you remove everybody instantly when they do, when they do something that's against what you guys do, there's a system for it. And some people will resolve it on their own,
right?
After, once you start using your system. So, but not having a system and not being consistent, once again, a red flag. That will cause more issues. And as your gym grows, it's just going to become a bigger issue, because there's no way in the world that you won't have more of those same issues. They will continue to happen. And if you don't have a system for it, it won't fix it. So
for sure. Other times, that the culture, or I would even say the morale, and those are 2 different things. But when the culture is not good, we talked about that. But when the morale is maybe low, morale is a temporary thing. Your morale can be high for a couple of weeks and then it's low for a couple of weeks. Maybe you have your end of season events and morale is low because you've had 2 or 3 injuries right before All-Star Worlds or Summit or Worlds. And so the morale is kind of low. Kids just are not hitting routines. You have major issues, but then you get through it and like, okay, that went okay. It wasn't, as disastrous as we expected it to be.
Wasn't as bad as we thought. Yeah.
And in reflection, this has been a really good season. And so the morale increases before banquet, stuff like that I think we have to pay attention to the morale being low also. That doesn't mean you shouldn't grow, but I'm going to put a huge caveat to this. Low morale doesn't mean you shouldn't grow and focus on growth unless it's the owner or the top people within your staff.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
true.
when morale is low or they're burned out, people don't want to be at the gym right now. Among the key leaders in your gym
Right.
is not the best time to focus on growth.
And when we say focus on growth, we're not talking about the onesies and twosies that are coming through the door
Sure.
just because of word of mouth and they just happen to be driving by. We're talking about where you're actually putting out targeted ads and you're
Yeah.
trying to grow substantial numbers. So, don't think that we're like, anybody coming through the door,
Turn them away.
turn them away,
Wait,
push them
listen.
away,
Yeah.
lock the doors.
Yeah.
Not that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's times in our gym that we are going to do bigger pushes. We're going to push for those kids to get into summer camp. We're going to push for more private lessons. If your tumbling director is totally burned out right now and just needs a couple of weeks, needs a vacation, needs something like that, maybe right now is not the time to push for all the new tumbling clinics. That said, does your staff understand the big picture? Right?
Ooh, that's a good one.
And I think it depends with my staff. That's the answer to like everything. It depends.
It depends. Yeah.
If my staff is burned out because we've just been going, should I push? Well, it depends. Are we, right?
Yeah.
Are we going to be in a position next month where their bonus is going to be less or their teams aren't going to have, I'm going to have 5 novice kids on a team if we don't push right now? Am I inhibiting my future growth by not pushing right now? So I guess that's where your staff understanding the big picture and saying, should you push for growth? It depends.
Yep. And once again, coming back and knowing your numbers too. Hey guys, it's notoriously bad moving into May. So we know that we're going to lose approximately 50 kids. We need to push this month so that next month is not as bad.
Right.
And also it helps out with all, payroll, everything, and keeps us all working the same hours. So we're working, that type of thing. So yeah.
Right. And I think there's a balance of setting goals that are both big and audacious. And then the balance of but we also need to set goals that we think we could reasonably achieve. Justin and I have 2 very different opinions on this as the visionary that he is and the person who actually executes the goals and measures the goals.
The day-to-day.
The day-to-day.
Yeah.
Truly the CEO and the operational
Yep.
mindset. I think that you have to find the balance because if I constantly set goals for my staff, we're going to have 200 kids in here for summer camp this year. And we've only ever had, 120 in the past. Now you're saying you want that kind of growth and staff is burned out. And, if you're consistently not meeting the goals, it is going to continue to burn out your staff. Sometimes people just need to see the win. And so you have to balance that. We want to set these big goals because we want to challenge ourselves and we want to achieve greater than we expected. But we also need to have some wins within that.
So we're constantly arm wrestling.
If you're on
So
YouTube.
It's constantly arm wrestling over this.
Yeah.
I always want to do big goals, and she keeps.
I want little tiny
and
goals
she wants
that
little.
are super
I was about to
easy
say
to achieve.
you don't want little tiny goals, but just more achievable goals, and I want it
Yeah.
a little bit on the unachievable because
Right.
what happens if we hit unachievable goals?
Right.
That's pretty crazy awesome.
Well, and we actually talked about this last year when it came to setting revenue goals
Yeah.
for 2025. Should we set a 20% increase in our revenue, which coming out of 2020 and 2021, man, that was easy.
Yeah.
22% revenue increase was awesome and it wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
But now that we're way past that and we're in 2025,
Yeah, it kind of went.
it's a
and now
lot harder to see that same kind of
Yeah.
growth year over year.
Yeah.
And so that's the arm wrestle that Justin and I kind of experienced as between the visionary and the operations mindset of do we set a huge goal or do we set a goal of okay, this is going to be a challenge, but we can achieve it.
Yep.
And I won. No, I'm kidding.
No, we met right in the middle.
We did. I still think they're very challenging, actually.
It's still challenging, but at the same time, it's not through the roof.
Right.
Crazy.
4 months into the year. Yeah. Now, can I say, do I think we've hit our revenue goal at all? No, but we've been very close, which to me is okay, I'm okay with that because I know that means we're going to hit it. We just need to build up that momentum a little bit more.
Also, when you don't have, and this is a big one, when you don't have goals at all, you're just kind of I'd like to have a successful year. There's no parameters set around that. It sounds good. And none of your staff really understands that. hey guys, I just want to have a successful year, but when you actually have revenue goals every month and one for the year that you've broke down for every month, and your staff knows it, that transparency, they understand what they were wanting to do. Also that entails, if we do grow like that entails people get pay raises, they get,
Right.
there could be bonuses involved, those types of things. People are more likely to work harder to get that.
Yep.
And also, enjoying the successes of that. So it's more of a team effort instead of a you effort.
Yep.
And that's super important in a business like this, because if you're doing everything yourself, you only have so much capacity. But when you have a team behind you, the sky's the limit. That's that CEO, lofty, dreaming guy. Again,
Visionary.
The visionary, yeah. Sorry, I got a little bit crazy there, but for real, like you can. I mean, it's unbelievable what a good team can do. So
I agree with that.
Yep.
Okay, number 4 of times you should really reconsider that plan for growth. When you have major internal transitions or timing issues with things. So for example, maybe you are in a partnership and your partner is about to sell out or knows within the next 3 or 4 months, I want to retire, or I want to sell and we're going to move or something like that. If you're in that major transition moment.
Throw one caveat on there too.
Okay.
Unintentional ones, like somebody has a medical issue.
After the fact. Oh,
yeah.
Sure.
Has a medical issue and it was not planned, but
Right.
now all of a sudden you have one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are not the best times to focus on growth. There are definitely times within your business that it's okay to focus on maintenance and maintaining things well.
That's easy for you to say.
Notoriously,
Yeah.
no, I'm kidding. A gym owner I was speaking to recently, that one of the key leaders in her gym, a director, had a major life event with a medical issue within his family, and it pulled him out for 6 weeks. During that time, we did 4 calls where I coached this owner through. We didn't talk about growth. We didn't talk about how to grow your all-star program, how to grow your preschool program, how to grow the number of birthday parties. We talked about, from this, what systems are we finding that could use some work?
Yep.
In your organizational chart, who can step up and take this, take on some of the roles this person had. That would not be a time that I would ever recommend that somebody focuses on growth. And you can't do it long term. You can't say for 6 months, we're not going to focus on growth. But for 6 weeks or 2 months, yeah, you can maintain, and that's okay.
When a major player steps down for whatever reason, medical or, unintentional or intentional, that's not a normal thing that happens a lot in a business. So when that happens, unless it was really purposely planned for, and people have really thought out the process, there are things that are going to get dropped. And so there are so many things, and you don't even, some of them are tangible and some of them are intangible. You don't even realize are happening. But all of a sudden you'll feel it later. When you're talking to, especially in this case, like a coach, the coach can kind of steer you towards some of those things that are maybe intangible that you don't even know about right now. But that's definitely not time to be growing the gym.
Right.
It's definitely time to maintain and try to find out where all the holes are that with this person out right now. What are we missing and what do we need to catch up on or fix or
Yep.
Or push off to other people. Delegate.
Now, there may be a couple of times, because I would even go so far as to say a major staff turnover. And I don't even mean tons of people. Maybe your all-star director is going to be shifting, and moving on to a new career or going to another gym. There's a little bit in here of kind of what I said earlier of it depends. As an owner, do you have the capacity to take on a little bit of what that person was doing? And do you have the rest of the staff that can take on some of it? Because a couple of years ago, 2 years in a row, we had an all-star director and she decided she was going to move. And so I found out in about April, and we already had a lot of the momentum for the next season going. I wasn't going to stop marketing all-star. Now, did it mean that we were suddenly shifting and saying we may have a couple of bigger teams this next season instead of the mid-sized teams that we had kind of hoped for? Yeah, it did affect that, and then a year later it happened and she moved also. People just hate our town. What is wrong with it? No. And so I think it makes a little bit of a difference. Like, it depends. As an owner, I was able to take on some of that. I had a gym manager that was able to take on some of that. We had it super systemized. Like, everything is in a checklist for literally everything that needs to be done for an all-star season.
Right.
And most of it has a system attached to it, to where I could have our administrative assistant at night, like, hey, can you put these people in Reg Champ and enroll them for next season for, that competition? Can you do this? And so, yeah, it depends.
That made that transition a little easier, though, with it being systemized. So we knew exactly how many hours we really needed to spend in different categories, and you can split that up. But when you don't have that systemized, that's when it makes it really tough. And so, not a good time to grow at that moment. So yeah.
So yeah, can you grow during a major staffing transition? It depends. How well is it systemized?
Yeah.
Do you have the staff who have the capacity to backfill and are trained enough to backfill? And do you, as the owner, have the capacity to either take on some of that, train for it, or outsource it?
All right. Number 5, growth without profit is just a stress machine.
Stressful.
Notoriously stressful.
You guys are going to hate us at the end of this episode.
Word for the day. This is like Sesame Street. Sesame Street's word for the day.
Or you're going to say notorious like 7 times today and be like, why am I saying that?
Notorious B.I.G.
So let's say you have a program like your recreational cheer program or your tiny cheer or beginner tumbling or something like that, and it's not profitable. What a stressful time to see a program like that grow.
I mean, I guess the question is, do you know what the profit margins are for your different programs in your gym? We find coaching that there are so many gym owners that are kind of afraid of their numbers. They don't really know what their numbers are. And so just bringing more kids through the door seems to be the answer. Mm-hmm. They kind of know a ratio of kids to coaches, basically. But at the same time, it's they don't know their numbers well enough. So they kind of guess. They kind of use other gyms as an example. The problem is other gyms don't have your numbers. Mm-hmm. They don't know how much it costs to run your gym, to turn the lights on, to your rent, all the expenses that go into it. They don't have the same uniform as you. They don't have the same everything as you. So running off other people's numbers is a total guess, very, very bad way. And I'm not talking bad to anybody, but it's just not a very good way to run a business at the end of the day. If you don't know your numbers, and so in this case, if you don't know each program's profit margin, it's really hard to make educated decisions when it comes to your gym.
And I think a lot of gym owners don't know their numbers for a few reasons. One, I think they are afraid to look at the numbers sometimes. If the numbers say that my All-Star program is losing money or barely making any money, man, they love that All-Star program.
But that's my passion.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give that
It's
up.
a passion program. And so I think it's hard because they're afraid to look at the numbers, but if you don't look at the numbers, you can't fix it. Yep. I think secondly, you're putting out fires in every other place all day long that you might put it on your list to look at your sales this month or calculate, your profit margins. And it just doesn't make it on the list it's on your list, but it never gets checked off today. And so it goes on the list for tomorrow and it doesn't get checked off tomorrow because you're running around putting out fires in so many other places. That is something that I'm definitely guilty of, but not when it comes to the numbers, because the numbers are the fact in the gym. I don't have to operate based off of feeling because I have the numbers that prove the fact.
Yep.
Well,
and the bad part is there's daily decisions that are made in a gym.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what the facts are, then you're making emotional decisions in your gym. And unfortunately, it doesn't work out well with emotional decisions because you will basically get to the point where you're running certain programs will pay for the other ones. And they all look good, barely, or you're barely breaking even, or you wonder why there's not enough money in the account at the end of the month. It's because there's some of those programs in there that are probably losing money and the other ones are holding them up.
Also, you have to think of the fact versus the feeling in this as well. If I go off of feeling, how are we doing for retention for next season? Well, I can tell you the names immediately of the 4 kids I coach that are not coming back next season. But if I look at the fact, those 4 kids span over 3 different teams. That's pretty darn good retention. Realistically, 4 kids out of 50 kids that I coach are not coming back, the math is mathing. Like, we're in good shape when it comes to the retention. And then if I don't have the numbers, I might be stressing because I'm like, well, 10% churn is maybe not super great among the program, but then I'm missing the fact that I have 3 teams right now with 100% retention on them. And one of them is the biggest team in the gym. And so if you aren't looking at the numbers, you're operating off of feeling and you're not making the best decisions for your gym.
So one little shameless plug for a book, but Charge What You're Worth by Dan Cotton. Great book.
Yep.
And it's all about numbers. So it basically helps you, because otherwise, unless you're using other gyms as an example, or you're coming up with the best you have, like just based on what you can understand, it's interesting to hear from another gym owner or somebody that's talked with many, many gyms and literally written a book on it, on this is what you should be doing to get the numbers, the correct numbers, and here's the profit margin you should be having in the cheer industry. Charge What You're Worth by Dan Cotton. It's on Amazon and it's on Audible as well. So,
Yep. Good plug for that. Okay, the final one we have here. Don't grow just so that you feel productive. If you have a lack of strategy in your gym and you're just really not sure, what am I supposed to be doing next? Growth maybe isn't the answer. Sometimes you're trying to solve the wrong problem. So if you're not doing the math, if you're not calculating your churn rates, if you're not looking at the average revenue per member, if you're not calculating your profit margin, you're going to find that you might be focused on growth, but you had no idea that 15% of your recreational program is churning on a month-over-month basis. And so you're solving the wrong issues.
oh yeah.
And a lot of times when we solve the wrong problems, they compound, they become bigger, and you find that it becomes very hard to control a problem if you find out about it too late.
So we've talked about retention. We've talked about systems. We've talked about culture, profit, pricing. All of those things, they all go hand in hand with growing this gym. So if there's one area that just really sticks out to you, focus on that. Start finding out what's wrong with it. So you're at the end of the month, like you're growing, but you never have any money.
Yeah.
You have a profit problem. You probably have a profit and a pricing problem.
A cash flow problem. You might have a lot of problems.
Yeah, but it has to do with money, obviously.
Right.
So you need to dive into that and start looking at like why, let me break down each program.
Right.
Down to the kid, like how much do I need to have, like each kid that's coming in, how much profit margin's built into each one.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that correct, but once you fix that, you're going to see some changes.
You also might be saying, I don't have enough money at the end of the month. I'm spending too much. My expenses are too high. And maybe they are.
Oh, yeah.
But also maybe your expenses are pretty on point, and that's just kind of what it costs to operate a gym, and your revenue is too low. Maybe your revenue is high, but your expenses are high and your profit margin is too low. And so you have no overflow or no buffer at the end of the month.
That's a good breakdown. Yeah, that's a good breakdown. If you guys use that, that would be a great one.
Yeah, I mean, I
right
coach
there.
clients. That's how I know. And guys, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, but how would I know? Like, we offer a coaching program.
Yeah.
Next Gen has the Next Gen Academy, where you are paired one-on-one with a coach who has done this stuff before.
What kind of coach, Danielle? When you say coach, I say coach to people and they're like, they think of a person that teaches time.
They're going to condition you if you mess up your numbers. Like,
you're doing push-ups.
And Justin, that is what I need.
Bear crawls.
That's like my personal trainer says, like, you mess this number up.
But no, this is a business. This is a person that owns a cheer gym. That is a business coach with us now. They've been through the academy, been through our coaching program, and they've gotten to the other side and done really well. And we bring them on as a coach. We hire them because of their skills with teaching as well. So, and
not only have they experienced it themselves, but they're a Next Gen certified coach that does ongoing training. And so let's say this client over here in the UK is having an issue, and this client down here in Alabama is having an issue. Well, those two coaches are communicating on a regular basis about, hey, how do I help this client troubleshoot this? Oh, I've actually had this before. Here's what you can do. And so not only that, but it creates this great network of gym owners that can ask questions and get different perspectives, because sometimes the reason you're not in your numbers is because you're afraid. And you know what? You're not alone.
Yeah.
Like I use that as an example because I've heard it twice this week from gym owners. I just was afraid to dive into the numbers. I was kind of afraid of what I was going to see. And it's April. I don't blame them.
The thing that I hear the most from people is the fact that I have gyms around me. I can't talk to them. Mm-hmm. And it's a tough, because you want to be competitive, but unfortunately the competition goes from just being kids competing against kids to gym owners competing against gym owners. And so it's really hard. So it is nice to have somebody that you can bounce your ideas off of. And I think that's one of the biggest things. And about being in our Facebook groups too, we monitor those and make sure that good advice is going out there. And so if they're
going to delete your bad advice if you give it to people. So guys, if you found value on this episode of Fireside Chat with the Johnstons, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is not even a coaching call.
Yeah.
This isn't one-on-one talking about your personal circumstance and situation. This is kind of blanket advice that we're giving for free. So imagine what sort of success you could have if it was tailored to your circumstance and from someone who actually knew you. And I think that that's probably the coolest thing about the Next Gen Academy.
And we've been doing this 13 seasons now, and we're still married. So we made it. So far.
That's why I needed Justin to come back on the podcast. I was like, people are going to think that the Johnsons have problems. Everybody has problems, but this isn't.
Owning a cheer gym's tough. It's not easy. It's not easy, but it's so nice having somebody that actually understands the issue you're going through. And that's why we like hanging out with people that have bigger programs than us, because they've been through the issues that we've got, or are about to go through or are going through. And it's really nice to know that somebody made it. And it's always best to talk to somebody that was successful at it.
Yep.
You can talk to a lot of people that were unsuccessful, and their advice is going to be run, like that meme, run. But you want to talk to the people that have been successful, because nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants to do that. And at the end of the day, it would be nice to have something that you can pass on, a legacy. You can pass this on to your kids if they want to do it. I've talked to so many people that their kids are taking over their programs, and it's fantastic. But it'd be nice to have something you can sell at the end of this too as well.
Absolutely. All right, you guys. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of Fireside Chat with the Johnstons. Make sure you get registered for our Dallas conference, June 20th through 22nd. We will, 2025, I should probably say that in case you listen to this at a future date.
And what were those dates again?
June 20th through 22nd.
20th through the 22nd.
2025.
Yeah.
And you can get registered at ngconferences.com.
This one is going to be awesome.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, you guys. With that, we will see you on the next episode.
Ciao.